Hey everybody, this is Stacy. I'm from iTalk. Usually I'm the lady with the red lips, but today I'm changing up colors because I do love lipstick. And it's nice and feeling empowering and just self-care for me. So today we have Tina's going to join us. She's a social worker here in Ontario, and she's going to share with you her services and how does her services help people to cope with stress. But before Tina will present or speak to you about her services and her passion behind it, I'm just going to do a quick demonstration. So today I have here, because sometimes in our services in social work, or the clients that we work with or the patients that we work with, is how they see their lives and their perspective of what they can do. So our jobs is there to provide that support, because I'm going to take, for example, a glass and some water. And hopefully it can come through very clearly on the camera. So I'm just going to pour the water halfway. So the question is, when you see your life, is it half empty or is it half full? Because sometimes people see like it's half empty because of I have learning disabilities, I have physical health disabilities, I don't have housing, I don't have a job, I don't know how to express myself, I don't know how to communicate, I have trauma in my past, I have different things in my upbringing that make me question myself, and sometimes I can be confused, and this prevents me from moving forward in my life. And some people, so what we help as social workers is that we help you see the glass half full of, yes, I may have a learning disability. Yes, I may have a physical disability. Yes, I have trauma. Yes, I have my past experience or challenges, but this is what makes me great. And all the things that make me great to where I am at this point can help me move even forward in my future. And so today we're going to talk with Tina, who's going to share with us about her passion and what brings her for her services and how it can help people to provide that support. All right, Tina, I'm going to turn over to you.
Great. My name's Tina, and I'm a social worker at Surrey Place. So my role is to help support families of children who have autism. So that could be anything from, how are they coping and their stress every day, also running groups, so getting them connected and helping them reduce some of the isolation that we've gone through with the pandemic. It's so hard raising a child with autism with these really severe behaviors and being on their own. And the geography is so far away. How do they connect with other people? Every single day they're managing behavior and they're so overwhelmed. Often there's an impact to the brothers and sisters in the home, the grandparents, everybody's stretched and they're so overwhelmed. And how do they cope every day? It's a huge, huge challenge. And the stress levels are through the roof. So there are families that I speak with every day. There's families I speak with once a week, just trying to help them feel more connected, help them feel more supported, because it is such a large stressor. In terms of the background that I have, I came from working in children's mental health as well as child welfare. So I have a myriad of experience. And my passion came from my parents, who are also social workers, longtime members of the OASW and the college. So they both have been in the developmental field their entire career. So I thought, yep, this is a field where I really want to help people. My passion is to make people feel empowered to speak for themselves, to help them advocate. Diversity is very important to me. So the parent group that I run is completely diverse, and the families feel so connected to me because they can see themselves reflected in me, right? They see that I'm like them in that way, right? They can understand that I'm very supportive and understanding. They see that I'm diverse. So there's things they don't have to, if they have to explain something about racism, I can understand a lot of their struggles and their worries about advocacy, their worries about rocking the boat and creating waves. So, and I told them, I'm always your voice. I'm always going to speak for your needs in the way that I can as a social worker. on the team. So I'm always, when we have team meetings, I'm always the one reflecting the family's concerns. I'm speaking for their needs. I'm advocating. We're talking about the bigger system issues. So they don't just live in, oh, they need funding tomorrow. They also have to think about the longer term future and the planning, residential placement, if that's something they're interested in, respite, all of those things that will help them feel that they are well supported as a family. Those are the conversations we begin to have to help support their needs. And of course, there's community resources and people on the team that can help support them in other ways as well. So we meet together and we talk about how the families are coping. But in terms of that family level of stress, we know it's through the roof and they're really struggling. And so this is definitely my passion. And it's just about trying to be that support for them and trying to give them some coping strategies, helping them with some of their thoughts, either shifting some of their thoughts or letting go some of their thoughts, helping them with mindfulness, helping them in just getting through every day. And then also dealing with a lot of the sibling stress. So the siblings often feel like everything's placed on them. There's so much pressure. They have to take on these adult roles that they're not prepared for. The little ones are fearing, terrified, and there's some trauma in terms of being exposed to that high level of aggression. The parents are experiencing PTSD, right? Because they're bracing for that next beating, they say, from their child, because that level of aggression is so high. And so what's their sleep like? Not good, right? Are they even taking care of their own medical needs? Not really. So we have to talk about self-care. It's so critical. So I liked how you started with self-care because it's exactly what we need as ourselves as professional. That's important to us to have that boundary and focus in our own self-care, especially we're kind of isolated in the pandemic, but also for these families, right? So having self-care, talking about mindfulness, talking about what they need. Are they moving towards things that are important to them? So their own health is really, really critical. So that's a big focus of the group as well.
Thank you. So I have actually a few questions because thank you for sharing all that, because you touching on points like that found, like you not only looking at the individual, that client, but also everybody that's in the family, like the siblings, the parents, because a lot of people overlook the siblings because you said the term of they take on roles like adult roles because siblings are very overprotective of their own and want to make sure that they're cared for and loved and also protect from other people. Because I know sometimes with autistic children, it can be very challenging to others that may not have an understanding. So my question is that how did your practice, how does your practice especially helps out that making sure the siblings are never been overlooked? Meaning that support, that self-care.
Yes, absolutely. I think, Stacy, it's a huge part of my clinical assessment up front. So when we do the systemic type of assessment, right? So myself, because I'm the only social worker on the team, I look at the full picture. So the first thing I ask the families, who is in the family? How is their stress level? Who are your support? There's no supports, by the way. None of these families have any supports. They don't have family here. They're by themselves. They're from other countries and they're isolated. So who are the siblings going to? The first thing I want to know is who did the siblings have for support? Nobody. So I want to speak with them. I said, please tell me about when I can meet with the siblings. I want to find out more information right away. And like I said, the grandparents may or may not have a critical role, but the siblings definitely are hearing it and feeling it. And of course, the theme comes in the sessions quite often. But when I hear those key terms, those flags for me, when I just do that first assessment with the family, I suggest that we start having some sibling counseling sessions right away. I don't want to ignore what's going on. Yes, our agency has groups. That's wonderful. Absolutely. Sometimes there's other underlying issues around anxiety, depression, suicide. As an assist trainer, that's something I'm always keeping, my eye on. And sometimes it's issues around even further, right? So things like, bipolar issues or things like that, where they could be, because there's so many stressors going on with these families. So absolutely, my focus is on the full system, not only the siblings, the community. What is your community telling you about, if you're looking at a group home placement where you keep all your rights, are they giving you messages that that's a bad thing? Are they saying, no, you should be ashamed of yourself as a single parent, you should be able to keep your child forever? But sometimes you just can't, you're overwhelmed, there's not enough resources. We know the adult system isn't capable of managing with the funding. The wait lists are 20 to 30 years. Let's be realistic, right? So let's do some planning. And if they choose not to do group home, that's fine too, but we have to just know what's out there. So is the community giving you that supporting message? Are they being judgmental? And how do you mitigate some of that thing? And even within your own family, do you feel like you can really talk about how challenging the disability is with your family if they have the belief that that's some kind of curse, is that some kind of negative connotation, or do they really understand exactly what you're going through? Because they may not be physically there to see the day-to-day struggles. So it's sometimes repairing that relationship with the family or realizing that more distance is needed. So like I say, it's just bigger and bigger. There's always more going on with these families and all the stressors that they have to face. So siblings is one piece, grandparents is another piece, any other caregiver in their life could be another piece, anybody who's just basically jumped in to help with the family friends, anybody in the community. We just have to wrap that community around these isolated families.
So how can we bring the awareness to other communities, like it be here in Toronto, GTA, or even outside of the area? Because I also reach out to people in Canada and US. How can we bring awareness? Because like a lot of children still not aware of what autistic looks like. And even sometimes in the classrooms and parents, or like, especially with newborns, because I've had, I had a friend of mine whose daughter has been diagnosed with autism, and she was able to identify at very early stages that, hey, something is not right. And I noticed and observe in my practice that some parents catch it on even later on in life. And sometimes I'm saying it prevents them of their ability to learn or ability to adjust in the life, is that when you can't catch, how to make awareness of how to kind of catch that early, because to kind of get that support going even sooner, because like you said, there's a longer wait list, there's a lot high demand, very limited resources. So how can we bring that awareness?
And the other thing we have to think about is stigma, right? So even you feel like there's a diagnosis, but then the other family members like, no, they'll just grow out of it. It's just not a big deal. Don't worry about it. They just have these issues, but they'll just be cured. They'll be fixed. So kind of reducing some of that messaging. So whether it's in a cultural community agency, I think there's a South Asian agency in Toronto. Some of these places are starting to build the understanding from day one. But I also think having these talks, having, again, within the culture, within the earlier center, within the daycare, we're starting to have those discussions. They're starting to make some flags early on. Your meetings with your doctor when their child are, their babies, they're starting to do some of those awareness assessments and different questions that they're starting to ask. So there's increased awareness that are coming. Some of the schools will come to you and say, I think I'm concerned about, but I think it's that gut instinct from the parent, but also that kind of, we need to have a lack of judgment. We have to be supportive and understanding that those things, we have to, if we see something in our gut, that we should follow up with that, right? And so, looking into, maybe we need to further assess this. Maybe we need some more understanding. And maybe, there definitely could be more talks within the school board system around autism. That would be amazing. Because I think it's become a very siloed, being the only social worker on the team, we're a siloed system, right? Where we need more understanding that more social work is needed for sure in this field, and more understanding in the community is needed, whether it's the school board, early years, that there are differences in children, and we to be aware of what those flags might be, for sure.
I agree, because you said something very key point, is that for parents is that gut feeling, because I realized when you follow your intuition, 98% of the time you are correct. And
Yes.
even though it could be challenges of communicating with providers or doctors of like trying to figure out, like, there's something wrong with my child and you don't know exactly what it is,
Yeah.
that could be prevented as a barrier to some parents or discouraging. But is that if as long as you go with the gut feeling, it's to keep on fighting for that of something's going on with my child or something's going on with the child that I have, like it could be a caregiver, and they need to be just to check out what's going on, because that starts that process, because a child cannot receive support unless it's from that parent or caregiver or the guardian to kind of get that push of something is not to agree, to acknowledge that something is not right. And sometimes it's hard, like if say if a doctor may disagree or a provider disagrees, but is that making sure of, hey, something's going on with my child, I just want to make sure everything's okay. And if it's still feeling there, it's just to kind of still go for it, because we never know, because some, like you said, if especially when individuals have problems like understanding some of the signs or to know what's going on, it can help that child to have better understanding of how to be in classroom, how to communicate, how can a parent communicate with autistic child, because it can be challenging too. And learning that different communication skills, so everyone can be in the same, like just same path and journey as a family. So my last question is actually is, how can, like, especially with autism, usually it's like focused like with children, but I know going to adulthood, how
Mhm.
does, like, would the services help them to prepare for them get into adulthood? Because I know you mentioned about like sometimes like there'd be an option for you the group home, there's other supports, and sometimes it takes up to like 30 years, like 20 to 30 years before you can receive that support. So how
Mhm.
can your services help them get into adulthood? And what is it like
Absolutely.
once they get there?
Yeah, and it's a challenge. And we do have social workers in the adult team, which is lovely. So it's great. It's like there's that light of the end of tunnel. Of course, they have wait lists too, but it's having that conversation. So that, again, Stacy, this is my first conversation with the family. Do you know that once your child turns 18, and I'm not trying to scare you, I just want to make you aware that funding that you have right now is going to shift. And it's not going to be the same level of support to hire a respite worker. And then you have to deal with, they're not in school all day long after 21. So I'm just asking you to consider, and we can have these conversations multiple times, what your plan is for the future. And as I said, if you feel like you can hire some supports and be able to keep your child at home, wonderful. If you feel like this is kind of a conversation we need to keep having around, maybe I need to get group home placement. Maybe there's something I need to pursue. I need to pursue it now or before 18, before 17, even because of the wait list, so that they can consider some options, right? So they have to kind of look at every option under the sun so that they are ready for that adult system, because things do get cut off, right? Their funding level reduces to much less than they had. They are waiting for social work services. They'd be waiting for things like case management, service coordination, all of those things that could help support them. There's wait lists. Occupational therapy, behavior therapy, there's wait lists. There's some programs that are starting to be developed around young adult transitional programs there, and it's wonderful. There's social worker attached to them too. Great. So again, it's just sort of having someone who has that voice to say, I think this, this child's turning 18, they're 17 in the system. Can we flag it for those kind of transitional youth programs, something like that? Always having that advocate. Sometimes your school social worker could be your advocate, who knows, right? So perseverance, advocacy. I help families also learn the language. So there's certain key terms like DSO. What does that mean, right? Well, that means that it's the adult system, Developmental Services Ontario. Make sure you have your psych report ready, things like that. Just make sure you understand. So they're going to assess your family and see what their funding needs are. So that's what IDSS means. And this is like all of those kind of acronyms. It's like this whole learning curve all over again, and they're starting the process. So preparing them, having those conversations, like, don't be shocked that some things are going to shift from the child system where you're very well supported with funding and resources, and even not perfect, there's still lots to OAP, like there's so much to navigate right now, to shifting to, you're going to have to be even a stronger voice for yourself, because when you get into social work, you're going to have to clearly articulate some goals. You're going to be working with them. they can't see you forever, things like that, right? So, but also understanding that they're going to work on behavior. They might work with the adult. They may or may not be working with the family. So it just depends. Everything sort of shifts, right? So helping families build their voice more and more and advocate for the services they need. The program that I'm in, they're going to have to sort of advocate with the school system. And I'm hearing voices become stronger, which is so lovely. They're saying, no, I'm going to look into the homeschool again, or I'm going to see what resources they have. They say, oh, I'm going to look into the SIP. Great. Like I was looking into SIP grant, extra funding, things like that. They're starting to know the terms and advocating for those things that they believe that they need for their child. It's wonderful to hear the voices growing. Again, I think it's part of having that parent support group, the parent support, whether it's running a group or parents sort of getting together virtually on Facebook or other social media to say, what do you do about such and such? And I'm kind of following a lot of those groups to say, oh yeah, this could be helpful, or hearing how other people are navigating, because we're all lost. And again, in the pandemic, and people may or may not be attached to, like I know Peel, for example, has they have Kids Pathway, they have a ton of resources and supports. For most families, they have service coordination immediately available. So some of those things are either York Region, York Support Services there. So it's kind of like you have these people in place that are wonderful already. Service coordination is very available. So other programs, you have to, again, you have that language and the knowledge to sort of advocate and ask for what you need to get that. So it becomes a little trickier for some regions versus others. I know, for example, in Kitchener-Waterloo, there's a social worker. So certain regions, there is some availability versus others. It's really challenging as, let's say you were a first-time parent, and definitely, again, most of the families are immigrants trying to figure out what's happening and having to learn all of those terms. It's very confusing. Like there's so much terminology. Stacy, I don't use terminology like that. I said, what do you need to know from me? We can spout all the CBT Act stuff, systems. They don't want to know all that. How do I work with you as a person? And that's why I'm able to engage with these families so well. I don't use that jargon. I'm very much about, what do you need? How can I help you? Let's work together. Plain language, make it understandable. A lot of these families do have language concerns. And so which translation would you like? And are you still understanding me? Constantly checking for that understanding, making sure that they know what's happening, because I don't want them to be lost in all of that. All of those terms, all of those acronyms, we can get lost. That's great that we're smart. They don't need to know which theoretical framework we're using. They need to know that we're there connecting with them and forming a relationship. We're virtual, so we can't even see them. So we're losing that connection. So we have to work even harder to have that rapport. That's the biggest, right? In terms of even just engaging with those families up front and finding out that full picture situation, a biopsychosocial right up front, hearing everything that's going on and listening constantly for more and more themes that are coming up, more and more concerns, what's really pressing on their mind. And we know what the stressors are, and we know what the pressure points are. And we're not going to ignore it. We're going to validate that those concerns are very valid. And it all comes in a systems piece, right? Sometimes we're hearing about medication. Well, we're not medical people. I'm going to text my nurse right away and say, okay, this came up, by the way, and so we just listen for all that information, because families don't work in, okay, we're just going to talk about this today. They're going to be talking about everything, all the stressors that are on their mind at all times, because it's too confusing to try and piece it all out. We can be helping them navigate and piece things out. This person is for this person is for this. They can figure that out later, but that's usually the social worker is the one hearing the whole story from beginning, middle to end. So termination is important, right? Having proper discharge, we have a report, but also talking about the importance of, okay, we're going to transition, we're going to say goodbye. So what else do you think you need from me? How do I help you when you have to advocate for the adult system, when we have to call the Developmental Services Ontario, when you have to make that phone call? Now, do you remember what you need? Okay, let's go over it again, right? So just having those reminders, anything we can do to help support them in any way.
And that's good. And thank you for what you do, because like you mentioned, is that for social work is, as a provider of support, is listening is the key thing, because like you said, you're there for like the beginning, middle, and the end. And that able to provide information that is understandable and echoing their needs and making sure they understand, because how can parents understand, like, when so much information and when it comes to life and when so many things are going on, how can I make sure that whatever I'm communicating to you about services, that you're able to understand and grasp and able to do your part to provide that support for your child, or the child that you're taking care for. And the main thing what you mentioned is that transparency, because like you said, is that at the end of the day, yes, we have all these acronyms. Yes, we will have the social work talk or provider talk. But at the end of the day, if the clients cannot understand of seeing the big picture, then I feel like we're not doing our job, because is that our job is to provide of, hey, I'm here for the support. What is it that you need? And I'm going to be very transparent of, this is limited funding. There is this limited resources for this. This is what we need to do going forward. These are the documents that you need, because instead of like a surprise, this is what we have to do. Because that's not, because you want to be able to help prepare them mentally and even physically, or just even around the space of getting themselves in that situation of, instead of last minute, because to find certain documents is not easy. To get certain diagnoses done by doctors, the time like may not will be conflicted, because between your schedule, doctor's schedule, and so forth, and you want to be able to make that time that not feeling rushed, and that you're able to think clearly, because like it goes with that I feel this like a part of a self-care of preparing yourself for these meetings, because it's going to be so much paperwork, understanding lingos that you may not understand, don't know where to go, maybe get this wrong person to get in contact, and getting them in the right direction, giving them a time to breathe and figure out and taking time to get the materials that they need, so they get ready to be prepared to do what is next. Because as a parent, as any parents, it could be very overwhelming.
It is overwhelming.
Process. And I like that you mentioned about the social media piece, because I know, like, even though I know in the past for social work and social media has not been a forefront, but especially even before the pandemic, but especially now in the pandemic, the social media is a very key part, because that's why we have the iTalk, because it's that we want to educate people as much as we can and have something accessible for them to get the information, because by joining all, like you mentioned, all the different groups on social media, on Facebook, just to share the knowledge, because even one piece of knowledge can help so many people, because you'd be surprised of how many people may not know.
Came in the group, somebody said, I need something that doesn't buzz for the haircut. And they asked in the group, and then they're like, what about this? What about this? What about? It's a simple question, right? It's something as small as, I'm trying to figure out, and they all came up with ideas and suggestions about how they can do a haircut. It seems like why this might feel small, but I know in their mind, this is huge. I've had 15 meltdowns and I can't do a haircut. Okay, so now we've got the support. I said, okay, parents, let's brainstorm together, see what we can do, and what are your ideas, and is there some other type of clippers they can use, what other ways they can distract them from the sound, and how do we deal with meltdowns, and all of those great tools that and some of them, were good suggestions, and some of them the parents like, no, I won't use it, but thank you, it's all thank you, right? It's not, that's a terrible idea. It's okay, I'll consider. Even medication, like, we're not ever assessing, medication being good or bad. It was just like, well, mine's on this one and mine's on this one. And it's more like that. It's not really about, taking notes or anything. It was just like, oh, that's normal, that's the type of regime. Okay, good to know. All right. That's right. It's not a criticism of the medication. It's more, they just want to compare notes and hear, oh, okay, they're on that level. That's very normal. Okay, good to hear. Right. And it's just sort of a nice supportive space. But I think you're right, Stacy, the amount of information when families first get diagnosed, they get these like toolkits are like 100. Who has time to, do you think any parent, we're even with typical children, I don't have time to read 100-page document. And then imagine, why are you sending it to families who don't have time to read emails? Like, we get flooded with emails and resources like that may or may not be relevant, or these 100-page documents. Like, just don't give us any material. Like, it's too much. And tell me what I need today.
Especially for new parents, like immigrants, especially like if the documents in English, that
they're all in English,
not even their first language, or
Oh,
even just the understanding, because like you mentioned earlier, the stigma of how their upbringing is when it comes to children and so forth, because then you're learning something new and then you kind of going against of, what are you taught and so forth. But it's that, like, going back to the social media, that with that with the feedback, that's bringing awareness of not only like awareness of other ideas, but is that, hey, I'm not alone in this situation, because
exactly.
is that when we're in our families, you just feel like you're the only one dealing with it, not realizing there is so many other families that may experience it, because it's still that taboo. Some people may feel it's still a taboo conversation to have, and feeling hush hush, or feel like that self-blaming of, I did this to my child. And is that's not the case, is that you're not alone in this. And everybody has something different and something unique about them. And it goes back with my demonstration. Are we seeing the glass half full or half empty? Because when they're coming in, they come in with a half empty perspective, but we're there to provide that support to help them see this is a half full glass. And we can make this even overflowing, if you like. Um,
Absolutely. And we can have a plan in place and we can support. Yeah, absolutely. They're coming in often overwhelmed and in tears, like, what do? I don't know. I've never talked to anybody about this. I've never had this. The child is 15. I'm like, okay, this is really sad. I need to have met you like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Why am I meeting you now? This is horrible. That's why I said we need more social worker in the system, because we shouldn't be meeting them at the tail end where they're so at their wits end and overloaded, and they're having thoughts of suicide or whatever they're going through, right?
right. So thank you, Tina, and thank you
Thank
for
you.
taking the time to meet with iTalk today, because this is a very much needed conversation for the support for individuals who are diagnosed with autism, or parents that may think about, like, just give them parents awareness, or individuals could be providers, caregivers, awareness about what autism looks like and what that process is, because a lot of people don't know and feel like and may not know where to even begin. And thank you for sharing today, and all the resources, perspectives that you shared today.
Thank
So
you.
the kind of shift, just to kind of remind that, so iTalk is a platform where for providers to come share their passion of their services and how it copes with stress, because especially with the pandemic, there's so much questions of where can I provide, where can I get certain resources, where can I get the help for the stress that particular stress that I am dealing with. So yeah, so with the amount of stress that we deal with, I just also want to remind everybody a self-care tip. Just one self-care tip for today is, as I shared in the first season of iTalk, is of the journaling. Journaling helps to get those thoughts out, even drawing, painting, any ways to express those feelings out. If it's playing music, if it's creating something cool, something different, just getting that creative part of you to express that feeling, because there's never no right or wrong way of expressing yourself. It's just definitely of trying to figure out in a healthy way, so that we know, like, so that we're not just building up of what's going on, like as Tina shared with us today, that there's some parents that may have challenges, been suffering with challenges of what's going on, and just kind of pressing all those issues or the challenges inside them for many years. And even the children, the siblings, the grandparents, the caregiver, whoever may be, even teachers and doctors, is that to find that time for you to kind of get those feelings out, because we still matter at the end of the day, and just want to make sure that our overall health is doing good. So before I end, just want to share with you the Young Living oils I'm going to share today. I actually have two, Panaway. Let me see if I find in my camera, and RC. So especially it's getting colder, and everybody, some people, I know myself, my body, my muscles get tight in wintertime, especially since I moved back from Tennessee. So my body here in Canada could be like the muscles, like sciatic nerve can flare up, or when I want to exercise can be challenging. So Panaway and RC is good for our rubbing on our, like our areas where we feel the tightness, to kind of get get your muscles relaxed a bit, so that you're able to exercise. Some people use it before they exercise and some people use it after. And just to remember, when using the essential oil, is to use a carrier oil. It could be like a shea butter, coconut oil, olive oil, etc., but not directly on your skin. But yes, it's very helpful for those who are interested with essential oils. And also just a reminder, if you have any questions about Young Living oils or anything about today's conversation or any iTalk, or if you're even interested to do an iTalk with me as Stacy, please email me italktostacy@gmail.com. Also check out my website at talkinghelps.org. And also there you'll see the first season of iTalk as well. If you also need counseling services, I'm also with One Piece Therapy. If you want to meet with me individually and even for groups. And just have everybody enjoy your day on the day to day. And make sure you take care of you. Bye, everybody.